Hello and welcome to an interview with the Warrens. I'm Krista Olson and I will be bringing you into some of the supernatural experiences of world-famous demonologist ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens live in the neighboring town of Monroe and have investigated many cases in the local New England area. Besides investigating, the Warrens also teach, write, and host programs on the supernatural. Ed Warren is the director of the New England Society for Psychic Research, and Lorraine Warren happens to be a gifted psychic whose ESP has been rated above normal at tests conducted at UCLA. Together they have investigated over 3,000 supernatural phenomena, as well as over 40 exorcisms. Many of these cases have been conducted along with well-respected police departments, doctors, and clergymen. The Warrens' work has received worldwide attention, especially the Brookfield slaying case of 1981. Today we are going to discuss this case, and later we'll be discussing some ghostly photographs that the Warrens have brought along with them. Welcome to the program today,
Nice
Ed
to
and
be here,
Lorraine
Krista.
Warren.
Thank you. It's a
You
pleasure.
did that very well, Krista.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. I'd like to begin by asking, what exactly is the Brookfield slaying case about?
Well, it has to do with the possession of an 11-year-old boy. We were called in on the case by a Roman Catholic priest who at that time was pastor of St. Joseph's Church in Brookfield. He had told us that we had his prayer support, but he was rather fearful of becoming any further involved in the case. He was getting ready to leave for Ireland with his mother and was fearful because of the fact that he had fallen victim as a result of exercising a home that he was called upon to exercise in New Fairfield through then Archbishop Curtis. And so he said, "You have my support, and I realize it is most likely a case of possession, but unfortunately I won't be able to work with you." Well, there were 6 Roman Catholic priests that worked with us. 3 of them were schooled and ordained in Rome. They were knowledgeable men in the areas of demonology as well as their work in theology. We were called to this home where David Glotzel, a young 11-year-old boy, had come under diabolical possession. It all began to take place in a home that his sister and the sister's fiancé were renting. They were going to be renting this house, and on the end of it was like an in-law apartment where Arnie Johnson's mother was going to be living with the 2 sisters. It was in that home that David first exhibited signs of possession. It was rather strange and rather bizarre what occurred. It was a bright afternoon, bright summer afternoon, and they were setting up things in the apartment, and Mrs. Glotzel, Judy Glotzel, was helping her son, or her daughter and going to be son-in-law in setting up the furniture and like that. Now the previous occupants had left behind a waterbed, and kids are drawn to things like that, 11 years old especially, and they're jumping on the bed, jumping up and down on the bed, and the other children went in the other room. And as David went to get up off the bed, he described this man as appearing. He could see everything about the man, the plaid shirt that he was wearing, the jeans that he had on, could see everything about him. He could describe everything about him. Now David would find it very hard to articulate to that extent. David had a very slight learning disability, and usually children with learning disabilities find it very hard to articulate regarding seeing things in that type of perspective that he was explaining it in so much clarity. Now, he told his mother at this point that he wanted to go right home. And the mother said, "No, we're working, we're finishing off what we're going to be doing. We'll be going home in a little while." Well, he pouted, walked out of the house. He was frightened. And that night, in their home in Brookfield, it appeared again. Only when it appeared that night in the darkness of the evening, which is the psychic hours also of the night, which start at 9 o'clock and go till 6 o'clock in the morning, he described this man as appearing. Everything was exactly the same, except that he said the man looked burnt, and he had feet like a deer, which meant they were cloven. And from that
Keep
time,
in mind that the man that she's talking about is a ghost. You know, there was no man there.
Right.
And we were to later find out that this was not even a ghost. It was a demonic spirit.
that appeared to this child. That was really the introduction to his becoming a victim of diabolical possession. Now, we worked for months on this case. There were 3 exorcisms over David. They were very violent. The phenomena that occurred in the home was very, very violent. But the priests remained very steadfast in their dedication to the case.
And there were 7 Roman Catholic priests involved in that case.
Yes.
3 of them schooled and trained in Rome itself, at the Vatican. We had psychiatrists, medical doctors. We had Catholic priests. We had psychic researchers staying there day and night. We had relatives. We had the family. We had photographs. We had recordings. We had police officers in there. We had all the evidence to prove in any court of law that this young boy was diabolically possessed, and the young man who helped him later, Arnie Johnson, who was 18 years old and lived in the house, came under demonic possession. Any evidence that you could prove a case with in any court of law in the United States, we had, and the judge would not allow us to bring it in. If he did, Arnie Johnson would not have spent 2 or 3 years in prison.
But in this case, Krista, what had really happened is that there was a tragedy that had occurred. Now, the tragedy came about, we believe, and all the clergy involved believe. Now, Ed spoke of one extra priest. This one extra priest was a demonologist for the church. He also was going to be testifying. He also was able to get permission to testify, although he was not from this particular Catholic diocese. He was from another Connecticut diocese.
And keep in mind that this case, Krista, made international headlines.
Right.
I mean, everybody was waiting for this lawyer, Manella, and ourselves, and all the investigators and the priests to step into that courtroom and to bring our evidence. The very first morning, the judge said, "No way. We're not allowing the devil made me do it case in this courtroom," which was wrong, because the devil does exist. Many devils exist. And a skeptical public is the best protection that the devil has. Now, people can poo-poo the whole idea of ghosts and haunted houses and devils all they want. But look for the evidence. Look for the proof. And you know, Lorraine and I did set a precedent in 1990. We went into a court of law and we proved that a woman was driven out of her house with her small boy by ghosts. Now, you go in and you do that kind of stuff, Krista, and you've got some evidence. You've got to have evidence, you know. You're not going to go in and say, "Oh, yeah, I seen a ghost flying around." What we want is hard evidence. And for the skeptics out there that say to us, "There's no such thing that exists," it's ridiculous. Every great religion in the world today is based on a supernatural world that worships God. We call God by different names, maybe, but that's all right. It's the same God. And what we're proving here every day through our New England Society for Psychic Research is that that God exists, and devils and ghosts and demons all exist. And we have the proof for that.
Now, do you know what exactly possessed the young boy?
Sure. Possession? Possession is the same thing as when you walk into your car and you drive that car away. You possess that car. You control it. When a spirit, either human or inhuman, invades your body, it takes over your body completely. You are possessed. Then the first stage is oppression, very similar to an invisible being alongside of you and whispering thoughts into your head that you carry out. But when possession comes, you don't even know it's happening. It just happens to you.
No, I believe you were asking what possessed.
What's possessed?
What possessed
Right.
David?
Oh, devils. Devils possess David. In fact, you know, up until about, maybe half the case was over with, even after Arnie Johnson had killed this young man while he was under possession, we had thought that there was one devil, which they called the beast, which everybody had seen, which was filmed, which was recorded, but there were actually 46 devils in that house. That's how powerful it was.
See, one attracts the other. So, I mean, one might weaken, but then the others just...
Take over.
Yes.
And keep in mind, you know, it wasn't the Warrens that knocked on a door and said, hey, is your son possessed? It was the Catholic Church, Father Dennis, who brought us in, called us up at 11 o'clock at night. We brought in a medical doctor with us, Dr. Giangrasso, who's medical examiner for Fairfield County. He examined the boy, and there was nothing happening to that young man that he would consider natural. It was very unnatural. And even while we were in the house, it was as though somebody took a 2x4 and was hitting the bottom of the floor underneath us.
That was like within the first 15 minutes that we entered the home that hot August night.
Possession is a very terrible thing. You would see an 11-year-old boy, he would be drawing, and all of a sudden he'd look up and that little boy wasn't there no more. What you seen was a monstrosity. This was a very powerful entity that was invading this boy's body to begin with. It would take 4 and 5 full-grown men to hold him down. And as I said, you know, it's not hearsay, it's not a ghost story. This was the real thing. Possession is rare, but not as rare as many people think.
But in this case, people are going to ask, well, how did Arnie Johnson become possessed as a result of David? It certainly isn't a contagious thing. But you see, he had challenged what was there. In his great compassion for this young boy, he would say, take me on, I'm stronger than he is, leave my buddy alone. And that was
They took him
very, very foolish.
You know, you
move.
challenge spirits and spirits will come to you. Right now we're working on 2 different houses. If the people that are looking at us right now could go into these houses with us, they would come out confirmed believers. There's no 2 ways about it. Mm-hmm. Because when you see tables moving across the room, you see things exploding on a wall, you see blood coming down a wall. Where's it coming from? How is it happening? Is it Hollywood hype? No, this is the real thing.
Well, maybe we could take a look at some of these
Some
pictures.
of the photographs?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's see now. What do we got number 1 here? That's, there we go. Well, of course, that's a headline from the News Times. And there were many demons to be blamed in Brookfield slaying. And they were blamed, except that they wouldn't let us bring in our proof. Of course, there's Brookfield Center, which is a quaint little village. And I often said to Lorraine, when we'd come home at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd look at the church steeple. I said, this will be the battleground between the devil and God.
It was.
Yes. That's the convent where the first exorcism was held over David. That's the nuns' convent. And during that time, I think it was the Blessed Mother's...
It was the birthday of the Blessed Mother
Right.
on September the 8th.
And that's when I had to go back to the house and through the use of a ritual called religious provocation, provoked there, and things were moving all over the place.
Yeah.
Oh, here's Arnie
That's
and Debbie.
the-
That's a very bad picture of Arnie.
That's a
He doesn't
terrible-
look anything like that.
He doesn't.
He's a very clean-cut looking kid. And here's, I believe that's Arnie or the
That was
father.
taken after an all-night session, had photograph of him.
You would be fighting with this young boy all night long, and he would have tremendous strength.
Tremendous.
Now, see, besides this, we look for outward manifestations.
That's-
Things moving around. Here we are again. I think that's Arnie holding his arms down.
It's
That's the
Arnie.
father got his
Yes.
arm on his chest.
Yeah, that's Arnie and Carl
Right.
Glatzel. Yes, it is.
Again, you see Arnie there. He's fighting and holding down the young boy. This young boy is very docile. You know, when he would not be possessed, he wouldn't say 2 words to you. But when he got like that, obscenities, everything came from this young man. And of course, that's Reverend Father Virgilac, who was the chief exorcist in the case in the church. During the exorcism that day in the church, tremendous things happened. The hymn books, which were on the seats, flew up in the air, doors opened and closed in the back of the church. The boy escaped, attacked the exorcist, and here's the...
This is Arnie Johnson's sisters. He was very, very devoted to these girls.
Shrine at Lourdes.
And he had them to his apartment the day of the murder. They were right there at that time.
That's Debbie and one of her brothers again.
Yeah, that's David and Debbie.
Oh, was?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And that's the convent again.
Yeah.
That's the front view of the convent in Brookfield.
The exorcism, the big, huge exorcism, which was
That's the
almost
parents.
came to a positive climax, was at the church. This is Mr. Glotzel and Mrs. Glotzel.
Judy and Carl.
Looks like Grizzly Adams, don't he? Nice man. And
Now
there's
that-
the church.
that's
and it was
the
the
church.
basement where the exorcism was held.
That's where the second exorcism was
We had
held.
brought some people right there where you see those cars parked, and we were talking to them. The man had a recorder on, and we played it back. A deep, gruff voice came over the recording saying, "Why are you here?"
Yes. In fact, what had happened, Krista...
In fact, Krista, we're asking, why are you here?
But anyway, Krista, what had happened was we were talking to this group in the driveway there, the big driveway, and we were describing all the things that had occurred in that possession case. And he had a small recorder, and he had it out like this, and he was recording everything that we were talking about. And he left his girlfriend off later that evening, and he started home. So while he was driving home alone, he thought, I think I'll listen to it. And he got to a certain point, and there were growls, and he couldn't figure out. He thought, something must be a problem with the speed. So he backed it up, and when he put it in reverse and it slowed down, it said, "Why are you here?"
That's a spirit voice, recorded. You know, we've had a lot of TV people and media come with us at haunting sites such as the White Lady, and even with Channel 7, Sally, Jesse Raphael, producers were standing there talking with me when suddenly a ghost veil came right across the whole cemetery. And this was something that everybody's seen. And that's what we like. We like the media to be there when we're investigating a case like this because they are an impartial jury. They have no axes to grind. If they see something, they said they've seen it. If they don't see it, they don't see it. That's it. So we always like the media to be there with us. Some people say, oh, the Warrens, they want to be on television, they want books, they want to be in the newspapers and magazines. You're darn right we do. All we can get, because that's the way you get to the public, through the media. You think Jesus Christ would stand on a hill and talk to 200 people if he could go on national television? Of course not.
And I understand you have some more photos of some ghostly apparitions. Maybe we
Psychic photographs, we refer to them as, Krista.
Okay.
Psychic photos. And we'll be glad to explain the circumstances under which these were taken.
Well, the first one here you see was taken in Ipswich, England. And the gentleman that you see at the wheel there, that's his mother-in-law back there who had died. They had gone to the gravesite, he and his wife, who was her daughter. And the wife had one picture left in the camera, so she wanted to use it up. Told the husband to get into the car. She snapped the photo, and there was Mom sitting in the back seat, just like she had for all those Sunday drives for that beautiful English countryside.
Although she had been dead and buried for 2
Yes.
weeks.
So that's how photographs of ghosts are taken. We have numerous other ones which we'll be showing you, but they're spontaneous. Now the lady really didn't have to get into a car to go someplace. Just by thinking of being there, she's there.
She's there.
If you
Right.
close your eyes right now, Krista, and you thought about being home, that's how fast a ghost can be someplace, even thousands of miles away.
Incredible.
Just in thought.
Okay, now, all right, this is an interesting picture taken right over here in Kent, Connecticut. On the old River Road, there was a haunted house that was, what was the name of that?
Bomas?
Bomas House, that's it. And right where Lorraine is standing, that's where it stood. But you notice the ghost is way up, just above her left shoulder there. That's because that's where the first floor was, and the ghost used to roam
Okay,
about.
that level.
It still moves about on the same level as it did when the house was there. Okay, we got some more, I guess.
Oh, yeah. You have,
I like the psychic pictures best of all because, as I said, the camera's an impartial witness. It only takes what it sees, you know, that's it. even though at the time we may not see that ghost.
But see, what happens many times is the spirit, like in this case, this monk in England, is attracted to the individual taking pictures. That's how this comes about. Now, they were doing renovations in this building, and he appears to be coming right through the wall in that building. Probably that wall was not there when he lived there and during his period of time.
That was in Bristol, England, taken.
How do you obtain these pictures? Do you actually take them yourself?
Oh,
or?
no. Most of them have been brought to us for research. And many of these places, like the ones in England and like that, we've actually traveled there and researched them out to be sure that they're
Right.
authentic.
Okay, this is a very famous spirit. Now, the difference between a ghost and an apparition is that if you see a ghost, you don't recognize it, Krista, but if you see an entity that you recognize, then it's an apparition. This one here we recognize because the name was Katie King. Back in 1874, a very famous man by the name of Sir Arthur Crooks, world-famous physicist and scientist, had taken 44 pictures of this spirit in a seance room. She would materialize through a substance called ectoplasm, which would emanate from a physical medium, in this case Doris Cook, an 18-year-old girl. But she'd walk all around the seance room, talk with the people, touch them, kiss them lightly on the cheek, and they'd talk back to her, and then she would dematerialize. But those 44 pictures that were taken of Katie King to this day have never been proven to be in any way fraudulent. Oh, this is an interesting one. A Civil War soldier, an officer. It looks like different men, but actually it's the same man.
One man.
If you look to the right, you'll see the lapelette on his shoulder there. This was taken in Milford, Connecticut by a young man who was taking a picture actually in his room, had no interest in ghosts, and all of a sudden this man showed up. We believe that a museum which is not very far from this house, which is a Civil War museum and is haunted, has something to do with this man here. Well, we're waiting for the next ghost to come up.
Next ghost.
He is coming up, isn't he, Krista?
Should be.
Okay.
But,
There
yes.
you go.
Now-
Haunted house in Massachusetts. The two little children are sitting there. Somebody snaps a Polaroid shot of them. But look at the face in the background of a lady. Deep-set eyes, high cheekbones, blonde bangs, hair. She was one of the ghosts in this house. But notice the milky white substance coming up from the child on the right. This would be part of the electromagnetic energy which is used by ghosts to manifest themselves as we see the face back there.
So do these ghosts actually have any significance, or they're just kind of normal, everyday people?
They were everyday people, dear, but for one reason or another realized that tragedy creates the ghost syndrome.
Right.
The older the area, the more chance of tragedy. So they've probably met their death under some violent circumstances, or they just never accepted their death. And in certain instances, they may have, and they just come back in spirit for one reason or another. But there is always a law of attraction. For instance, this building in England, Borley, England, that is Borley Church, which is referred to as the most haunted location in the British Isles. And believe me, when I tell you, that is certainly one of the most haunted areas. We have been there, we've been going there for the past 20 years, sometimes twice a year, and we have witnessed and experienced every type of phenomena that you can imagine. We have received an apport, which is an object that has dematerialized at one point and reappeared at another, an apport of an 1863 Victorian penny. And we have photographed ghost, two different
We have them
ghosts.
here. I think we've been shown the
Okay.
Borley Nun and the Borley Monk, I believe. Should come right up after this. Yeah, there it is.
There's the nun. There's the monk.
Way over to the left there. He's reading a book. He has a hood. He looks like he's bending over the hood, and you can see just his kneecap for the garb. But that's Lorraine way over to the right, and there's another spirit right in front of her. And she is describing this monk. Well, we can't see the monk. This is at 2 o'clock in the morning in that church. And just as she described it is the way the photograph picked up the image of that ghostly monk.
So to me, that's one of the most amazing pictures, because for anyone to be able to photograph something that is in your mind that I'm seeing psychically, and that is how I was seeing that.
Right.
And there's the
Here's the
Borley
nun.
nun. Now this here was taken, again, around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning in the church, which was all dark. But you see a lot of lights there. Now there was no light in that church at all, but if you look in the center there, you will see the figure of what looks like a woman or a nun. That came right past us down this darkened church, the aisle of it, went right toward Lorraine and two other sensitives. And as I was watching it go past me, it headed right down toward Lorraine. But this is one of the best pictures we've ever taken at Borley Church.
That's excellent.
All right, there you've got the Amityville Horror House. Lorraine and I investigated it, and I want to tell you that that was a horror house. There's been stories about it being a hoax. The only hoaxy thing about Amityville, of course, was the news media and the police department, which wanted to claim it was a hoax to get rid of all the vandals that were coming in and destroying all the property. But in the next picture, you'll see one of the pictures that we'd taken of a small ghost-like boy, which was in a bedroom. I think you have that one there. Let me see if you got it.
That is,
There it
yes.
is. Look over to the left now, and you'll see the bioluminescent eyes of a ghostly little boy looking out. Now, of course, this was the one of the rooms where two of the young boys were shot to death by their own brother, Ronald DeFeo.
These are all infrared photographs, by the way, of Amityville.
And they've actually made a movie out of that.
Oh my goodness,
Oh,
they've
yeah.
made more than one movie,
Right.
and there has been numerous
Books, movies, you name it.
Now, do they portray everything realistic?
No,
in
they
those?
did not.
Now,
You're-
here's what everybody looks for in their house when they start to watch TV at night. A ghostly figure coming right across the room. The young couple had just purchased this house. They were watching TV when suddenly this ghost-like figure over to the right there appeared. And we believe that it was a woman who died in the house and was haunting it.
Well, that looks like all we have time for today. Thank you once again for taking out the
Thank
time
you,
to
Krista.
appear with us on
It's been
this
a pleasure
program.
being with you.
Oh, thank you. And be sure to look and see what other events, Warren events, we have on your community access channel. And once again, this has been Krista Olson for Comcast Cable.